Hi, I'm Lori from Lori's Country Cottage, and I'm going to show you how to finish placemats with a pretty little edge using rickrack. So stay tuned, I'll be right back. This particular pattern panel that I'm working with today has 8 evenly sized blocks, but let me give you a little bit of inspiration with some other choices. This is a pretty one, but as you see, it has different sizes of blocks, and so I'll give you the size of the placemat, or of a regular placemat, and you can adjust these blocks to fit by cutting them out that way. So as you see, that smaller block has a beautiful gray background. So you can add to that, or you can cut the block out individually. It also works really pretty with any feature fabric that you can put within your placemat completely, or piece it in similar to what I did with the blocks. This is from the same line, Limoncello, and the placemats are already a placemat size. So there's 4 placemats on there and 4 mug mats. So you could incorporate the mug mats with some background fabric and make them all into placemats, or make mug mats, or line them just with cotton and use them as trivets on your table. So there's a little bit of inspiration. So I'm using the Limoncello squares, or rectangles, I guess they are. And what I want to decide is, do I want to trim right up against the blue, or do I want to leave myself a 1/4 inch seam allowance? So I trimmed this one right up against the blue, thinking I would stitch right up to here. Then I decided, no, if I'm going to use the yellow, I might like it to have the blue within the seam allowance. So that's what I did. Now I've cut 2 of them out like this, and so I've used my extra backing and made up just a little trivet. Now, if you're using it for a trivet, for a hot trivet, you might want to put a batting inside as well. I just have the decor bond. So once I top stitch this, or I can sew this in by hand to close that up. So you want to make your placemat between 15 and 16 inches. Mine is 15 3/4 inches, and then I've got the little rickrack around the edge. By 12 1/4 inches. Most dinner plates are about 12 inches, and so I wanted it to be just a tiny bit bigger. Depends on the size of your table and how many you have to seat around your table as to how big you maybe want to make your placemats. But that's a good guide. So 12 by 16 is a good size for your placemat. So you're going to want to add whatever it is you need to make your panel the right size, or your piece, or if you wanted it to just be one piece, like some of the pretty fabrics I showed, you could just use one piece of fabric to do the whole thing without piecing. So if you are using this particular panel, there is 8 panels, or squares, rectangles on the panel, and you will need so in order to make, or the requirements for 2 of the panels, 2 of the rectangles within the panel, you need 1 3.5 inch by width of fabric and 2 1 3/4 inch, and 3.5 meters of rickrack. You need 1/2 meter of decor bond and 1/2 meter of backing. So here I've got one piece of fabric for my back, and I've put decor bond on it. So I've added my 3-inch strips, one to each side of the panel piece. And I used the line of the blue as my stitching line. So when you're stitching, if you stitch it so you can see the blue, you have a perfect seam allowance line. So I've got my 3.5 on each side and my 1 3/4 on the top and the bottom. Then I have lined my rickrack up with the edge of the runner. And you want it to extend, titch past the corners at all 4 corners. So I've pinned it on here. I did one side at a time. So I did one side, then I added my next piece of rickrack and I stitched it again. And you want to stitch at 1/4 inch, but just a little bit shy, like a thread shy of 1/4 inch. Now I've got my piece with the decor bond on it, and I want to stitch this. Now, as you see, I've got a plaid on here, and so I'm going to use the lines within the plaid to line up so I'm nice and square. Now I'll pin it, and I'll stitch all the way around, leaving about a 6-inch opening to turn it. So when I stitch, I'm going to stitch right, really 1/4 inch right on the line, but on the inside of the thread, so that I won't ever see my stitching, but I'm not taking a larger seam allowance. So I'm going to stitch right on the inside of this all the way around. Once I've got it all stitched, I want to trim this, and so I'm going to trim it right against the edge of my placemat. I'm just at an awkward angle here. Now start my next side to trim. And I'm going to trim all 4 sides right at my 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I've got that all trimmed away. And then I want to take a pair of scissors, and I'm going to trim this right at the corner, and just, actually I can use this too. Cut it right near the corner, and then I want to just skim off a little bit. Because of the rickrack in there, there's a fair bit of bulk. So I want to trim the corner off, and then trim a little bit just to get rid of the bulk. A little bit short here, you can see, but that won't matter. And the last one. So I've got this all trimmed up. I want to take my opening and I'm going to turn this, and then I'm going to use a point turner to get my points out. Now I like this one. There are other ones. If you are a fan of Lisa, she likes to use the purple thing. And this is another one. I find this one is really nice, but it's a little bit pointy. A little bit too pointy for me. This one is nice because it is heat resistant, and so you can press right on it if you need to hold something while you're pressing. Okay, so you want to pull this around till you have it all turned. Eleanor Burns calls this birthing. It all comes out the hole. Okay, so now I'm going to go in with my point turner. And I'm going to find my point here. And I'm going to press that out so that it's nice and square. And I'm going to repeat that with all four corners. So I'm going to fold this up, my 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm going to press that. Just makes it easier for my turning. And this I like to press just flat like this. I try not to put too much pressure on the rest of it, because really this is all that I want to be flattened. And then I'm going to press this flat, and the rickrack just makes a beautiful, beautiful finished edge on there, which is pretty. And it just makes that edge nice and crisp. Once you've got all your edges pressed, you can stitch along the edge here. And this is actually my edge where I folded the back in my 1/4 inch. So I will pin it right there. And then I will top stitch all the way around like I did on this one. I also top stitched it just in from the blue line, and again here on the inside of the black line. You could do whatever you want. If you wanted to do something fancy here, you could, but these are quick and easy. Maybe I don't want to do any more than that. So thank you for watching. I'm Lori from Lori's Country Cottage, and we'll see you next time.